Okay, picture this. You're given the job of creating a library, but for every single living thing on planet Earth. Yeah, every plant, every animal, every tiny microbe. Each one needs a spot on the shelf. So, how would you organize it all? That's the fundamental challenge we're talking about today. Biological classification. Let's dive into the incredible story of how we've tried to sort life itself.
This need to organize the world around us, it's not new. We've been doing it since the dawn of humanity. At first, it was super practical, right? Like, what can I eat and what's going to eat me? But as we got smarter, we realized we needed a much more scientific system to really get a handle on the sheer, mind-boggling diversity of life.
So I'm going to ask you again, seriously, if this job was yours, where would you even start? Would you sort things by size? Maybe by color? Or, I don't know, where they live? It's this absolutely massive puzzle, and for centuries, some of the best minds in science have been trying to figure out the best way to piece it all together. Thankfully, we're not just guessing in the dark here. Modern classification isn't random. It's built on a solid foundation of scientific criteria. We look at the really big stuff. What are its cells like? How is its body put together? How does it get food? How does it reproduce? And, probably the most important one, who is it related to on the evolutionary family tree? So let's travel back to the first major attempt to catalog, well, everything. This came from the famous botanist Carl Linnaeus. You can think of his system as the first draft of our planetary library. It was a brilliant start, for sure, but as we'll see, it had some pretty big problems. And his system was, well, it was beautifully simple. Basically, if it's green and stays put, it's a plant. If it moves around and eats stuff, it's an animal. Easy, right? And for a really long time, this two-kingdom system was the gold standard. But as our tools got better, especially the microscope, the cracks in this simple system really started to show. All right, so here's problem number one, and it's a big one. The system lumped together prokaryotes. Those are the really simple cells without a nucleus like bacteria, with eukaryotes, which are complex cells with a nucleus like the ones that make up you and me. That's kind of like putting a comic book and a 1,000-page encyclopedia on the same shelf just because they're both books. It just doesn't make sense. And then there was this problem. What do you do with all the single-celled life? I mean, a tiny little amoeba swimming around, does that really belong in the same group as a lion? Or a single-celled alga, is that really the same as a giant sequoia tree? The two-kingdom system just kind of forced them into boxes where they didn't really fit, completely ignoring how different they were. And this brings us to the final nail in the coffin for the old system. It mixed up organisms that get their food in completely different ways. I mean, take fungi, mushrooms, right? They were just tossed into the plant category. But fungi don't do photosynthesis. They don't make their own food. They absorb it from other things. This was a massive misunderstanding, and it was clear a whole new system was needed, and fast. And that solution? It finally came in 1969 from an American ecologist named R.H. Whittaker. He basically looked at all those problems we just talked about and came up with a much, much better solution, an elegant, more accurate map for all of life, the five-kingdom classification. And get this, look at the time gap here. We're talking over 200 years between Linnaeus' system and Whittaker's. That just goes to show you how long scientists were wrestling with this puzzle. It was a really tough nut to crack, and it took a long time to get there. And this table, this is where the genius of a system really shines. Just look at how neatly it solves all the old problems. Problem 1, prokaryotes, boom, they get their own kingdom, Monera. Problem 2, the single-celled guys, they go into Protista. And problem 3, the fungi, bam, they get their own kingdom too, based on how they eat. It's just a way more logical, way more robust map of life. Okay, so now that we have our 5 shiny new kingdoms, let's go on a quick tour and meet them, shall we? And trust me, this isn't just a bunch of trivia. Understanding these big groups is fundamental to, well, pretty much everything in biology, from medicine to ecology. First up, we've got Kingdom Monera. This is the kingdom of the prokaryotes. Think of them as the original life forms on Earth. We're talking bacteria, the whole group. And knowing they're prokaryotes is super important. It's the whole reason antibiotics work. They can target the bacterial cells and leave our own cells alone. And don't think for a second that this kingdom is boring. The diversity here is just staggering. You've got the archaeobacteria. These are the extremophiles that live in places like boiling hot springs and crazy salty lakes where nothing else can survive. Then there are the eubacteria, which includes the amazing cyanobacteria that literally gave us the oxygen we breathe. And then you have things like mycoplasma, which are the absolute smallest living cells we know of. Wild.
All right, next on our tour is Kingdom Protista. I like to call this the junk drawer of biology. Basically, if you're a single-celled organism with a nucleus, but you're not a plant, not an animal, and not a fungus, well, you probably get tossed in here. It's a super diverse grab bag of organisms, and you'll find most of them in water. And what's in this drawer? All sorts of cool stuff. You have diatoms, which have these gorgeous glass-like shells and are super important for ocean life. You've got dinoflagellates, the guys responsible for those famous red tides. You'll also find the truly bizarre slime molds, and of course, the protozoans. That group includes famous ones like the amoeba and the nasty little parasite that causes malaria, Plasmodium. Okay, moving on to the kingdom that finally got the recognition it deserves. Kingdom Fungi. Let's get this straight. These are not plants. Nope. Their cell walls are made of something called chitin, which is the same stuff you find in an insect's exoskeleton. How cool is that? And the big difference is how they eat. They're heterotrophs that absorb nutrients from their environment, basically acting as the planet's ultimate recycling crew. And the jobs they do are absolutely critical. Many are decomposers, breaking down dead stuff and putting all those good nutrients back into the soil. Some are parasitic, sure, but a lot of them form these incredible partnerships. We're talking about things like lichens, which is a team-up between a fungus and an alga, or mycorrhiza, a vital connection with plant roots that literally helps whole forests stay alive. And finally, we get to the two kingdoms we're all most familiar with, Plantae and Animalia. Plants, you know them, they're the producers, making their own food from sunlight. They've got those rigid cell walls made of cellulose. And then there's us, in the animal kingdom. We're the consumers. We have to eat other things to get energy. And because we don't have cell walls, we can move around. But hold on, just when you think we've got everything sorted out into 5 neat boxes, nature throws us a curveball. Turns out, even Whittaker's fantastic system doesn't have a place for everything. There are these strange biological entities that live in a kind of gray area, making us question what it even means to be alive. I'm talking about things like viruses and viroids. I mean, these things aren't even made of cells. A virus is basically just some DNA or RNA in a little protein jacket. A viroid is even weirder. It's just a naked piece of RNA. They can't do a single thing on their own. They're the ultimate parasites. They have to hijack a living cell just to make more copies of themselves. And if you thought that was strange, it gets even weirder. There are things called prions, which are just infectious proteins. No genes, no nothing, just a protein that causes disease. And what about lichens? Where do they fit? It's literally a fungus from one kingdom living together with an alga from another kingdom, working as a single organism. It's an amazing example of two kingdoms cooperating. So what's the big takeaway here? It's that our map of life is never really finished. It's always a work in progress. We went from Linnaeus's 2 simple boxes to Whittaker's much better 5-kingdom system, but science doesn't stop. With all the new discoveries in genetics, some scientists are already talking about 6 kingdoms, or even a higher level called domains, which leaves us with a really cool question to think about. As we learn more and more, what's the next great sort of life gonna look like?